What's up, you guys? It's 2Bricks, and I'm back in with the next installment of my Micro Fleet series. And I just wanted to, before I start, give you a quick apology and say that I know that the content has been slow lately. There are circumstances right now that are a little bit beyond my control that I'm trying to remedy, but thankfully I'm able to at least bring you guys this video for now. So hopefully the speed will pick up again soon, but in the meantime, I really do appreciate your patience with me. So we're going to take a look at the ships that I have today from The Last Jedi. This is certainly not every single ship, of course. There's probably 3 or 4 other ones that I really wanted to get to, but I just haven't had the time to put into doing those yet. But I have a large ongoing list of ships that I want to tackle for each movie, and those will be coming in future episodes in kind of supplemental, incidental ship kind of updates. So without further ado, let's dive into the ships that we have here for Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi. Alright, you guys, so we'll start with the smallest update of the lot, which is, again, kind of a joke inclusion like the Millennium Falcon in my last video with the square radar dish. This time around, we have Poe's X-Wing with the booster engine attachment, which is just simply these 2 pieces back here, the new kind of candle flame piece and a hollow stud to represent that. At the beginning of the movie, Poe is making a suicidal solo mission run on the Dreadnought, and he's been upgraded to give him an extra kick of speed, and so I just thought it'd be fun to include that variation of Poe's X-Wing, which unfortunately does get blown up in this movie, so he doesn't have this one anymore, and it's one of my favorite X-Wing designs probably ever. I really love the color scheme on it, so I was very sad to see it go, along with everybody else that was in that hangar that got blown up. All those heroic pilots lost, sadly. But there you go. This is just obviously a tiny little update. Doesn't really count as a new ship, but I thought I'd share it with you guys. And keeping with the Resistance, we have the ever so tiny skim speeder, which is all that the Resistance had at their disposal in the final battle of the film when they're going up against the giant Death Star miniaturized cannon on the planet Crate. I wrestled with whether or not I should use a white base for this one because it's on the Salt Planet and that kind of red plume is so iconic against the white. But then the rules of my Micro Fleet series are that there's black bases that represent all of the... every ship has a black base, and so I didn't want to start getting into which ships should have some terrain, which ships should have just a display stand, so I went with just the red plume on the black background. This one is obviously so tiny and was really, really difficult to figure out exactly how I could even make something worthwhile to show you guys for this one, but I think it turned out pretty well. Obviously you have the little clip down here, which is the, what do they call that, the monoski that comes down and kind of stabilizes the ship, and that's just kind of what the whole thing is resting on. And then back here there's these interesting little flap engine kind of details. There's like, I don't know if they're for steering or what, but those are there in the ship, and I think, you know, having a little something back there to represent that was cool. And then just the tiniest little indication of the kind of cockpit off to the side, and then the gun on the other side. As, you know, given how tiny this is, it's obviously the bare minimum amount of pieces required. But I think it turned out pretty cool. I think if you saw this, if you saw a bunch of these charging and you had like the long red line going behind them, and they were going up against the ATM6s, I think you'd know what you were looking at, and that's all I can ask, really. So there's the skim speeder. And next up we have the Resistance Star Fortress Bomber. This is something that caused such a ruckus amongst the Star Wars community that I almost hate this vehicle. I love the design of it, and I love the inclusion and the role that it played in the movie, but Star Wars fans were so vocally negative about this thing that it almost felt like, to me, it was the beginning of the end for kind of fan acceptance of the new Star Wars movies, and that really bugged me. But I like this thing a lot. I'm using a printed Millennium Falcon piece, which was, or a cockpit piece here, which came in the latest microfighter of the Millennium Falcon. That piece works absolutely perfectly for this purpose, so I was really glad to be able to have that. There's these 2 little kind of antenna thingies here in blue on the particular ship that I'm representing. There were subtle color variations and marking differences on each of the Star Fortresses in the movie, but the particular one I'm going for is the same one that Lego depicted. There's these large cannons here up at the front, which are represented with these technically half pins, which are just plugged in very simply. And then there's these bubble turrets at the bottom and in the back, which serve as meager defense. There's also one on the top. Obviously, these things didn't last very long in the movie. It was kind of a freak coincidence that they all got taken out in one fell swoop, which was very sad to see. But yeah, I think I really enjoyed particularly the idea of this long chamber, which is just like a magazine for bombs. I thought that was a really cool concept for Star Wars. And if anybody's wondering, by the way, how did the bombs fall out into space out of the bottom of this thing? Well, they did give a canon update explanation as to why that is. Pablo Hidalgo said in one of the guidebooks that there's kind of this magnetic rail system that just propels the bombs out, of the bottom of the ship magnetically. But actually, there's no explanation like that needed, because if you think about it, in this movie, we see Paige Tico standing up here at the top, and there's a ladder that goes down to the bottom, and we see her fall down the length of this ship to the bottom and almost fall out the bottom into space, actually. And so that means that there's gravity inside of this tube, right? So if there's gravity that can pull a person down, then if you release the bombs inside of here, they will also be pulled down by that same gravity, and then they just go out an open hole at the bottom of the ship, and they just keep going, because, there's nothing to stop them, so they just continue falling in that direction. But anyway, that's my minor gripes with the fandom and with the response to this movie aside. I think this is a really cool ship. I really liked the Lego set that we got of it as well. I thought it was excellent. The pieces that they used were really ingenious, and the techniques were really good. They had this great bombing mechanism that was built into it, so really, really appreciated that. And translating it into a micro version of that set was a lot of fun. So there is the Resistance Star Fortress bomber. Next up, we have the Resistance shuttles, or the Resistance troop transports, which were just very simple evacuation kind of emergency vehicles. They have a really, really simplistic rounded shape, and it kind of evokes the Rebel transports, the GR-75 Rebel transports that I actually have some of in my fleet. In fact, let me show them to you side by side right now. Yeah, I don't know, maybe I'm the only one who thinks this, but it feels to me like this was a direct kind of inspiration or homage to this ship. Just, the overall shape and the purpose of just being an evacuation craft, I felt like it was meant to call back to this. But it's cool to see the size differences next to each other. This is really more like a civilian bus compared to this guy, which is like a really large-scale transport. But getting back to the specific design, I feel like it's, again, one of those things that's built for pure efficiency. The Resistance is all about just the minimum kind of no frills, get the job done vehicles, it seems like. So they went with these really, really simplistic rounded shuttles, and we see a ton of these trying to escape the main Rebel base ship and head for the planet surface of Crate, and then tons of them get blown up, which is very sad. And but yeah, this, like I said, it's just a handful of pieces, really no special techniques. I have this little clip under here that just kind of fills in this gap. That's about the only thing you could think of, I guess, is a special technique for this. I do have kind of transparent windows up at the front here. These black sections right here are supposed to represent the continuation of those windows. I just didn't have any, obviously, transparent pieces like that. But yeah, this is, like I said, a really, really simple one, but there it is. And next up, we have probably my favorite ship from the entire new Star Wars sequel trilogy, Kylo Ren's TIE Silencer. And this thing just screams bad to the bone to me. I mean, every part of this is so sleek, so sharp, so evil looking. It's like this, it's like a set of kitchen knives being hurled at you when you see it coming. So it's like the most kind of Terminator version of the original Darth Vader's TIE Advanced, but given Kylo Ren's flair for kind of, black and red, it looks even cooler and even meaner, I think. And yeah, I just love it. I used the Harry Potter magic wands to come up with the design for these front wings, because I really couldn't think of something that was even close to representing the wings at the scale correctly. They have those new wedge plates, which are really, really handy for certain ships, but those are too large still for this. And I experimented with a bunch of different techniques, but I ended up just having these two clips held in on either side of one of these bar holder pieces, and then some of these ingots on the side, just representing the faceted kind of continuation of those wings going back. And then this grill piece here for the kind of engine detail, where you could imagine the red glow emanating from inside of there. And then at the front here, just a very simple cockpit with a single trans red stud. But I think it's really effective. Actually, funny enough, this ship delayed my production of this particular video, because as I was moving some things around, I actually lost the ship somewhere in my house. There's a second one of these. And I only had 4 of these black magic wand pieces, so I had to order some additional ones and wait for those to come in so that I could show this to you guys. But there we go. There's version 2. It's the same build, but you know, the second edition of Kylo Ren's TIE silencer. But it's okay. Kylo Ren always builds multiples, as we see from The Rise of Skywalker. He's got a bunch of TIE fighters hanging around. And I just wanted to give you guys a quick look at the silencer next to the other kind of Empire Edition, earlier versions of super cool TIE fighters. So, got the First Order regular TIE fighter, and then, the First Order Special Forces, the regular stock Imperial TIE fighter, and then Darth Vader's TIE Advance back there. So, yeah, I really feel like this ship just kind of perfectly encapsulates the legacy of the TIE Fighter series, and then just hones it to an absolute razor sharp point. So I absolutely love it, and I'm so glad to have it in my fleet. Next up, we have the ATM6 Walker, the absolute just behemoth expression of First Order might and dominance. I really, really like the design of this. I think that for a extension of the original AT Walker, I think it's a really nice continuation of that design language, and it has a couple of fun little Easter eggs in it too, like how they included the little spike strips at the front so that they can't have their legs tripped up like the original design could. And they just have this massive kind of conveyor belt system that brings up the new shells. Each one of these, I guess, is a single round for the massive cannon at the front here, the M6 cannon, which this Walker is named for. There's a couple of fun little techniques that I was able to incorporate into this one, which make it kind of a little bit more stand out. I really like how I was able to get the front legs in that kind of almost gorilla-like stance and have them be posable and have it be pretty stable even when it's on 3 legs. It's got a pretty good walking range on it. I really like the proportion of the cannon here. I feel like that turned out really well with the screwdriver piece, and that the head is on a ball joint, so it can really have some attitude looking around, which I like. I think that as far as the proportions and different elements go, this part right here is probably my favorite element of the whole thing. This is a visor from a clone trooper, and it just is able to clip on to these 2 studs perfectly. I think this has been on here for a long time, so I think it's actually starting to just get a little bit stretched out, so you might call this an illegal technique, but it just creates these 2 little chin flaps that are on this thing so perfectly that I just couldn't imagine another way to do it. So really, really pleased with how that turned out. And then, yeah, like I said, you can get a pretty nice walking stance out of this. You can have, one leg can actually be all the way up. Well, it does start to lean forward a little bit then, but yeah, that's, oops, hang on. Wait a second. I've said that I can do 3 legs, so let's make that happen. There we go. So yeah, 3-legged walking pose if you want to, or it can just stand upright to its full height and full intimidation factor. And just thinking about the fact that these things are like, as tall as a decently sized building, the fact that Luke Skywalker really did go out there and face down against these things and did it with no fear whatsoever. I know that it ultimately ended up, spoiler alert, being a trick, but that image, that iconic image of Luke stepping out of the base and just being surrounded by these giant, kaiju-sized walkers was probably one of the coolest images in all of Star Wars, if you ask me. And just so you guys can get an idea of the scale progression of Star Wars walking tanks, we have here the original ATTE from the Clone Wars era, then the obviously next evolution of that in the AT-AT Walker, which is a dramatic step up, and then just in every single way, this is just increased that size, the bulk, the thickness of the legs, the large size of the head, that giant cannon on the front. So yeah, it's really cool to see how big these things have gotten over the years. And when you think about how much time has passed between these movies, I think, what is it, a total span of like 70 years, something like that. It maybe not even that much. It's funny to think of just how dramatically these things have increased. And if Star Wars was to go like 100 years into the future, are they going to have planet-sized walking tanks? I have no idea, but I want to see that. So I really hope that one day we end up getting episodes 10, 11, and 12 so we can see the kind of continuation of this curve upwards, because I want to see where this goes. All right, so we've done the Resistance, we've done the First Order, and now we're going to do the kind of unaffiliated. This is the Libertine, which is the ship that DJ and BB-8 steal from Canto Bight so they can rescue Rose and Finn and head on back to the base. And also Finn can learn some life lessons along the way. So, you know, a lot of exposition takes place on the ship, so it's important that it looks cool so that we can at least get some nice beauty shots of it as it's hurtling through space. And I think this is a really cool design. I really love the angled down fins here at the front. I think that gives it a really cool, interesting look. This is a luxury yacht, just like the Stinger Mantis from Fallen Order, and it's actually a pretty similar size to that as well. Let me show you guys a comparison. Yeah, in terms of overall bulk, these two share pretty much the same level of interior space, and I think, given what we see in the film, I think that actually makes sense. That feels like it lines up, because when I think about the interior space available in the Stinger Mantis, you know, you essentially have crew quarters and then a kitchen, and then the living space. In here we had the cockpit, and then we saw a couple of recreation areas, and then there's that boarding ramp underneath. So yeah, I think this thing is a really interesting mix between like a kind of luxury limousine and also a sports car. It's got this nice kind of fin wing thing across the back. Obviously it has that really sleek, thin body, so it just looks like it could really maneuver. And it's just a really interesting design. Like, I don't think we've ever seen anything quite like it in Star Wars. I like that they have the exposed kind of engine details on the side here just to make it feel a little bit more Star Warsy and not too sleek. And then down here I just very simply represented that little boarding ramp. It's kind of like this spiral staircase that descends down like a corkscrew from the bottom of the ship, and you see DJ and you know, and BB-8 down there. You need a lift, you know, that whole scene. But yeah, I think this thing is really, really interesting. The engines are kind of weirdly positioned where they just sit underneath, like right underneath these little wing details. And at first when I was looking for like where is the engine kind of outlet, because every Star Wars vehicle has like a glowing engine outlet, you know, and I didn't realize it was tucked way back under here. So I think this is cool. Definitely a weird one to try to capture, especially for my scale, because the availability of pieces to kind of convey the roundness on the cockpit, I kind of struggle a little bit with that. I would ideally like to have white on top of this shape right here and just kind of cap that off nicely. But there isn't really anything that would kind of do that without ruining the sleekness that I like about this ship. So this will have to do for now. But yeah, I think a really interesting addition to Star Wars ships in general. So there we go. Alright guys, so there is the full collection for this film. Like I said, there are some other ships that I want to tackle from this. There's probably going to be one more update video, I would say, in future about this particular film, because there's, you know, probably 3 other ships I want to make, and I think that'll be enough to just cram into one video, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, this collection is really nice. I think the Last Jedi really did a good job of expanding on the shape language and the aesthetic of The Force Awakens and giving us some new interesting designs. I think that the Star Fortress bomber is absolutely a spectacular design, and I love, like I said, Kylo Ren's TIE Silencer is my favorite new ship. So yeah, I think the Last Jedi had a really great crop of ships. I wasn't super thrilled with the inclusion of like the Nebulon C. I thought that was a bit safe for the Rebel fleet to just continue iterating on exactly the same kinds of ships that they had before. And the same goes for the Raddus being very much reminiscent of other Mon Calamari ships we've seen in Star Wars. It feels like the Resistance should be getting allies from all over the galaxy, and they should have a completely ragtag collection of all different ships from different cultures every single time we see them. But, you know, that's a minor gripe. I know that a lot of the idea behind The Last Jedi was to make you think about The Empire Strikes Back, but then flip that on its head. So it does make sense that they would want to include a lot of the same kinds of ship designs, but just tweaked a little bit. So I get it, but I do wish we had seen a little bit more variety in the capital ships. Really across the whole sequel trilogy, the capital ships were very, very safe and samey. But I like these ones. I like the spread that we got here, and I thought that even like the kind of tread walker thing that was dragging along that giant Death Star cannon, I thought, you know, those were cool looking. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting, unique design in these films regardless. So the next one I'm going to do is going to be The Rise of Skywalker. Now that that's out on Blu-ray, I can really study a lot of the designs and make sure that I'm getting the accuracy that I want. And then once that's all done, I'm going to kind of switch the format a little bit of these videos so that we can just do more of a casual, here's the latest ship I've made type of format, instead of doing them in these big batches. There are going to be exceptions though. I still haven't done the ships from Star Wars Resistance, the animated show. I do have those ready to go. So I guess after episode 9 I'll do that one, and then we'll go to the more loose format that I was talking about. And then I think another thing I need to do soon is give you guys a big, full overview, just an in-depth look at the entire fleet that you've seen so far as it stands, because it's been a little while since we've done that, and there's a lot of new ships for me to show you guys. So yeah, we'll be doing that fairly soon. So stay tuned for that. Thank you guys again so much for watching and for your patience, and may the Force be with you.